Hi, I'm Neal Fugate, and welcome to Part 5 of Understanding the RPA. And in this final video of the series, we're going to cover forms FHDA, the BIA, and the CCPA. As a reminder, when you get the RPA download packet, it comes with a number of other forms, and this is the complete list here. As I noted, in this video, we're going to go over the FHDA, which is the Fair Housing Discrimination Advisory, and that's a new form that was just added in October of 2020. And we're going to go over the BIA, which is the Buyer Inspection Advisory. We're also going to cover the California Consumer Privacy Act Advisory. As a reminder, also, the RPA is the Residential Purchase Agreement. It's the contract for the transaction, and only the buyers and the sellers are parties to the transaction. And like I say many, many times, if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. If it's not in the agreement, then it doesn't apply. So just keep that in mind moving forward. Okay, now let's move on to Form FHDA. The Fair Housing and Discrimination Advisory was added to the transaction packet in October of 2020, and it puts all parties involved on notice that fair housing is very important and discrimination is against the law. Section 2 identifies the federal and state laws that prohibit discrimination against identified protected classes. And in Section 3, it talks about the legal remedies for unlawful discrimination. Note here that violations of fair housing laws may result in monetary civil fines, injunctive relief, compensatory and/or punitive damages, and attorney fees and costs. Section 4 goes into detail about the protected classes or characteristics, and they are outlined here. They include race, sex, marital status, citizenship, color, sexual orientation, familial status, primary language, ancestry, gender, source of income, immigration status, national origin, gender identity, disability, both mental and physical, military, veteran status, religion, gender expression, medical condition, and age. Also, criminal history for non-relevant convictions and any arbitrary characteristics. So those are the protected classes that are covered by the anti-discrimination regulations. Section 5 notes that the California Department of Real Estate requires training and supervision to prevent housing discrimination by real estate licensees. And we actually, part of the testing that we go through includes this 3 hours of training for fair housing for all Department of Real Estate licensees. And when you need to renew your license, you also have to take that training again. That's every 4 years. Section 6 details that realtor organizations prohibit discrimination. The NAR Code of Ethics specifically prohibits discrimination. And Section 7 details who is required to comply with fair housing laws. Now, I highlighted everybody that it is included, and it pretty much covers everybody. So if you want to look through this list, you'll get a better idea of how inclusive these regulations are. And now, Section 8 talks about some examples of conduct that may not be motivated by discriminatory intent, but could still have a discriminatory effect. For instance, prior to acceptance of an offer, either asking for or offering buyer personal information or letters from the buyer. Now, this would include what are commonly known as buyer love letters, and those are buyer's letters that are included with an offer that might have a picture of the family, talk about how active they are in the church, things like that, which could actually reveal that they may be part of a protected class or not. And because of that, it could trigger either actual or unconscious bias by the seller. And that could result in potential legal claims against sellers and others by prospective buyers whose offers were rejected. Another example is refusing to rent an upper-level unit to an elderly tenant because the owner is concerned that the tenant might not be able to walk up the stairs, or they might have a house with a pool and they don't want to rent to a person with young children out of concern for the children's safety. That may show that the owner has compassion towards people, but it has nothing to do with the things that matter, which are the merits of the offers made. Section 9 gives specific examples of unlawful or improper conduct based on protected class or characteristics, and those include refusing to negotiate due to a person's protected status, refusing or failing to show, rent, or sell or finance housing because of their protected status, blockbusting or causing panic selling by inducing a listing, sale, or rental because of prospective entry of people in protective categories into that neighborhood. Those are all prohibited. And also making any statement or advertisement that indicates any preference, limitation, or discrimination. There are a number of others that are listed below as well, and I will let you go through those in detail. If you haven't downloaded your copy of sample RPA yet, I'm including the link below, and you can download a copy and go through all of these forms at your own leisure in depth. Section 10 talks about examples of positive practices, and those include applying the same objective property selection criteria to all prospects, to provide complete and objective information to all clients, to provide the same professional courtesy to all clients, and not to make any statement or advertisement that directly or indirectly implies preference, limitation, or discrimination regarding any protected characteristic, such as no children or English speakers only. And in 10E, it states that housing providers should use a selection process relying on objective information about a prospective buyer's offer or tenant's application, and not seek any information that may disclose any protected characteristics. Once again, you want to use the merits of the offer, not the characteristics or qualities of the person making the offer. Section 11 details fair housing resources that are available to people when they have questions about their obligations or their rights under the fair housing laws. All of these resources are available online, so feel free to check those out if you have any additional questions. Section 12 talks about the limited exceptions to fair housing requirements, and it also states that you should seek legal advice about whether the exception applies to your situation before assuming that it does. And as I've noted previously, real estate licensees are not qualified to provide legal advice, so that would include these exceptions. But A specifically says legally compliant senior housing is exempt in some situations, and B, an owner of a single-family residence who resides at the property with one lodger may be exempt, provided no real estate licensee is involved. C also says an owner of a single-family residence may be exempt in some cases if no real estate licensee is involved. D talks about an owner of residential property with 1 or 4 units may be exempt from FHA or rental purposes, provided no real estate licensee is involved, and that it also complies with E and F. All of these exceptions are there, but note that they do not extend to discrimination based on race. And that brings us to the end of the FHDA. It, once again, it puts everyone on notice that discrimination is not acceptable when conducting a real estate transaction. If you have any legal questions beyond the scope of this video, then I encourage you to contact a real estate attorney and ask your questions of that. The next form is the BIA, which is the Buyer's Inspection Advisory. The Buyer's Inspection Advisory is a very critical form, and it stresses the importance of buyers doing their due diligence when they're involved in a real estate transaction. It stresses the importance of property investigation. And it goes on to say that the physical condition of the land and improvements being purchased is not guaranteed by either the seller or the broker, and that the buyer has an affirmative duty to exercise reasonable care to protect themselves, including the discovery of the legal, practical, and technical implications of disclosed facts, and the investigation and the verification of information and facts that you know or that are within your diligent attention and observation. So you do want to get inspections done of the property as soon as you can when you get into the transaction. There are a number of reasons for that, but mainly it's so you get them done and you see up front that if there's something that you just can't live with or that you need to be addressed, that you have plenty of time before your contingencies run out to address those issues. You also need to look at the disclosures that the seller provides early in the transaction and see what they have to say about the property that they are going to sell you. Section 2 deals with the broker obligations, and it states that brokers and their agents do not have expertise in all areas, and therefore we cannot advise you on many items such as the ones listed below. And it also states that if a broker gives you referrals to professionals, that while they may refer you to those professionals, they cannot guarantee the performance of those professionals. The professional doing the work should be the one guaranteeing their performance. Section 3 reiterates, you are strongly advised to investigate the condition and suitability of all aspects of the property, and if you do not do so, you are acting against the advice of brokers. The items in Section 3 detail a number of things that you want to confirm for yourself, and I won't go through the entire list, but it's pretty inclusive. So once again, if you've downloaded your copy of the RPA sample form, then I urge you to look through this as well. Now, if we were in a transaction, I would go through these with you line by line and make sure that you understand the importance of each one of these. This brings us to Form CCPA, which is the California Consumer Privacy Act Advisory. The CCPA was added to the RPA download packet in December of 2019, and it is a direct result of the California Consumer Privacy Act, which was enacted in January of 2020. It grants California residents certain rights to the way that their private information is used by people who collect it. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but as I understand it, the reason that we need to disclose that is because in the course of doing business, a realtor may collect information, an online lead source, or actually even the information that we're going to disclose to the multiple listing service would fall under the guides of this Consumer Privacy Act. As I understand it, it mainly applies to companies that are in the business of selling that information for a profit. And that's where the protections come in regarding the California Consumer Privacy Act. I'm going to leave a link below this video for a quick guide that the California Association of Realtors produced regarding this specific advisory. And I think it'll give you a better idea of why we need to include it and what your rights are under it. We do collect information, and this does give you an opportunity to request that personal information not be shared. But from my understanding, the way that most realtors use the information they collect about their clients or prospects doesn't really fall under the CCPA guidelines. But that's why I'm including the quick guide below, so you can get a better idea of the legal implications on your own. You can go through this form in detail once you download your copy of the sample RPA that I've included the link to below. Then if you have any additional questions, please feel free to let me know. And that brings us to the conclusion of understanding the RPA. I hope this video series has been helpful to you, and I hope it's given you a much stronger understanding of what's involved in a real estate transaction. That's really why I've made the series, because I think unless you've bought or sold a home recently, then you may not really understand what you're going to be facing when you do buy or sell a home. And that's another reason why I've gone through each of these forms in such detail, just to give you as much information as possible so you know what to expect. And if I can provide further clarification, I would be happy to do so. I publish a newsletter email once a month, and if you'd be interested in getting more content on a regular basis, then feel free to let me know. Just give me your best email address, and I'll be happy to include you on those monthly emails. And once again, if I can be of further service, as always, I'm here to help. Thanks.